Hello, fictional. Welcome to the What If Issei. Today we are gonna see what if Issei is Son of Vinea. Part 3. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. A few weeks after the night where Kakabiel was taken care of, Issei had a surprise visit after having those few uneventful weeks to continue and finish his studies, so he could at least pass the grade. After those weeks had passed, he received an unexpected visitor. Azazel. Said Issei, and everyone but Rainier drew a weapon in caution at the fallen angel governor general's appearance at Issei's front door. And he raised his hands. "Hey, I come in peace. Fuck, you guys are on edge." Said Azazel. "Of course we would, we don't get visits from fallen angel leaders, not to mention any normal angel leaders." Said Issei, and he pulled Azazel inside but was still wary of Azazel even though he put his gun away. "Issei, you don't have to be so hostile." Said Rainier. "I know you are right, however, if Azazel is known for anything it's that he is crafty and tricky, he always has an ulterior motive." Said Issei. "Oh, how mean, but very brutally honest, but this time there is no ulterior motive. I would like to make a trade, knowledge and research of your sacred gear, your gun on your waist, and I will give you the white dragon." Said Azazel. "PFFT, as if. I see through the ploy you were trying to play last night. He was trying to camouflage himself as one of you crows, but thanks to my father and the recent combat, I know the difference between the two. I don't know how you convinced a high-level devil to fight for you, but please explain why you want the knowledge of my sacred gear." Said Issei. "I used to work on and own that same gear you are currently using. That is when it was just a core, but I would like to see how it has evolved ever since I gave it to those humans." Said Azazel. "That was the first, but it wasn't the last time the Pantheons would cooperatively work on a project." "If you say so, Azazel." Said a woman's voice. It was feminine, but had a small bit of gruff in her voice, and she walked in, gray blonde hair and blue eyes with pale white skin. Her body was practically the same as that night, the body was just as bountiful even without the armor she was wearing. "Hey, if your mouth stays open you're going to catch flies." Said the woman, and Issei shook himself out of his stare and shut his mouth, and when he came to, Azazel was amused by what he had just seen, and Issei's face lit up red in embarrassment. "Ahem, well maybe, but could I ask your name?" Asked Issei. "Valeria Lucifer, but just call me Val. I prefer it that way." Said Valeria. Wait, Lucifer. Are you joking or are you being serious?" Asked Issei, and he could tell that everyone else was just as shocked. Not even Rainier knew that the true heir of Lucifer hung around Azazel, someone who is part of a faction who used to hunt devils. "No, it's true." Said Valeria, and she leaned on the doorframe and crossed her arms and looked at Issei with a smirk on her face. "Well, last I remember, you owe me a favor because of your high ranking in Devil Society, thanks to you boasting to Rainier there." Said Azazel. "Crap, I completely forgot that I had said that." Said Issei. "Ha ha ha. Now you have to deal with the consequences of your own actions." Said Vulcan. "Please come in then, if we are going to speak about something like that, we shouldn't be out in the open." Said Issei, and they all went inside, and Kuroka made sure to secure the building and used a barrier to deter eavesdropping. "Well, I think it's a fair trade," said Azazel. "I received more information on a gear I helped develop, and as I heard and saw it developed quite nicely, and you get a new servant to fight for you." "Yes, but besides the new member what have I to gain?" "Your research may end up as a dead end." Said Issei. "So? If it does it does, a deal is a deal, even if it ends up as a dead end, you still get to keep the new servant." Said Azazel, and by then Caddis had arrived with a cup of tea for Issei, and one for Azazel as well, and as expected the tea was good. "Fine, but my gun stays with me, you don't get to carry my gun away with you, wherever you go." Said Issei. "That's fine, but then you will have to expect plenty of visits from me." Said Azazel. "Valeria, you now serve Issei Hyoudou, or rather Issei Vinea, the heir of the Vinea clan, and the son of Jiro Vinea." "Shit, he knows who my father is." Said Issei. "Internally of course he does, he's been around just as long as your father has been around, more or less." Said Vulcan, and Valeria walked over to Issei's side and bowed down on one knee to Issei. "Please stand, Valeria, I will not force the last heir of Lucifer, a clan more powerful than I bow to me." Said Issei, and Valeria didn't complain and got back up on both feet. Issei pulled out his gun and laced it on the table, and once he let it go, the flames went silent and it looked dark and cold, but the gem on the gun stayed red. Interesting adaptation. I guess since guns are not carried openly anymore, it doesn't need to maintain its color. Let's see what the hell." Said Azazel. "What?" Asked Issei. "This is totally the inverse of what I put into the design of the weapon." Said Azazel. "The core is completely disaligned from the main section, and the ability to change ammo types without reloading has been removed entirely. Damn it, even the self-lubrication system has been scraped. Sorry Issei, but it seems your gear needs some serious work before I can allow you to go into combat again. Damn humans and devils, completely changing my perfectly made artificial sacred gear." "Artificial sacred gear?" Asked Issei. Yes, Azazel is like a scientist, he likes sacred gears, and so he has taken up the idea of making his own sacred gears. Obviously they won't be as powerful as ones made by the original so long ago, but with plenty of adjustments they become just as powerful. Said Valeria. Suddenly a purple orb in Azazel's waistline started flashing. What's wrong, Fafnir? Said Azazel, and it seemed that while he was working on the gun this orb started speaking to him. I see, but not to worry, I will use some of the knowledge I learned when working on you to make this gear better than my original plan. Said Azazel, and the glow faded. Fafnir? As in the legendary dragon? Asked Ogi. Yes, I made a deal with him and it seems to be working out well so far. But with making artificial sacred gears comes a downside for the user, it's absolutely up to the user and their style for how it evolves around them, said Azazel. Unlike gears like the red and white dragon emperors, as well as your night sea dragon, they are not on a normal railroad track type of evolution, they evolve based on the feelings of the user, hatred, anger, love, sadness and happiness. It all affects how the gear acts. So in summary, said Azazel, stopping his hands and looking at Issei, how this gear evolves and matures is entirely dependent on you. And he got back to work adjusting the gear, and when he was done it was in pieces and its frame remained an old .357 revolver, and when he put it all back together it was in its original shape, and he slid it back to Issei, who when he picked it up immediately felt the strange weight distribution. The weight felt strangely closer to the forward end of the gun. It's going to take some time to get used to this weight distribution. Said Issei. Well, try it out, for example load practice rounds and tell it to adapt the bullets to holy bullets, then to demonic, then finally back to practice rounds. Said Azazel, and he did exactly that. With each reload the cylinder will self-lubricate, and the best part is that it doesn't get dry, even in the most arid of conditions. Said Azazel. Ugh, please don't do that again, Azazel. Said Vulcan. Well, he seems to have done some adjustments, but I think I might have to test it on my own at some point. Said Issei, picking up the gun again, and it regained its color and the flames relit itself, and just as soon he dispelled it. Perhaps you can test it by training with me? Said Valeria, and Issei accepted the idea, and they went into the backyard, and Kuroka immediately made a barrier, and so Issei and Valeria got in their ready positions, prepared to fight, and like his fight with Kakabiel it was a standoff, whoever moved first would likely get the first strike, and without even saying anything, Valeria summoned her balance breaker armor and started dividing Issei, but it didn't affect him much anyways. Divide my power all you want, Val, my base powers don't rely on energy. Eyes of Tharsis, said Issei, and Valeria attacked trying to punch him, and he saw the path she was going to take to hit him, and when the punch came Issei dodged it. Partner, it seems that the white dragon can divide you further if she makes contact with your body, do not let her hands touch you. Said Vulcan, and Issei took what he said seriously, and the white dragon was like a bullet, extremely fast, and Issei did what he could but then thought something up. He dodged and grabbed one of the white dragon's wings, and he felt the pain instantly from being jerked in the direction of choice quickly, and then he put his gun next to the wing's root. He fired and one of the wings fell apart, and Valeria crashed, and Issei fell on the arm that was already previously damaged, and he could feel the pain, he had dislocated his shoulder. That was fun and all, but I think I should finish this, Val. Said Issei, and he fired his gun, and the recoil was negated by the weight and the heat and pressure vented through the forward section of the barrel, pushing it back onto target, and the practice round definitely landed on its target, hitting Valeria's armor and throwing her against the barrier. She got up and quickly moved. She was definitely taking it seriously now, and she punched him in the face and got behind him, hitting him with a 232 combo, throwing him into the wall. She then grabbed him and threw him and kicked him in the gut. When he reached the ground he spat out some blood and got back up, holding pressure to his left side. 2 broken ribs, cracked jaw, concussion and a damaged spine. I think you should quit before she does something permanent. Said Vulcan, and Issei mentally disagreed and raised his gun again, and this time he did what had happened that night when fighting Kakabiel, disappearing and then reappearing right in front of Valeria, first punching her and then shooting her in the chest with 3 practice rounds, and it seemed that the anger that welled up from within him enhanced the rounds, and the bullets broke the chest plate, and Valeria coughed, having felt the force of the hits and knocking the wind out of her. Nicely done, it's been a while since someone has cracked or broken my armor, but now I think I should take this seriously. Said Valeria, and she took it up a notch further. You are a battle maniac, that's why you just keep going, isn't it? Asked Issei. Battle maniac? Maybe I am, but with this gear comes the need to want to steal domination from others. Said Valeria. That sounds dangerous, but I guess this next encounter started. Issei finishes this. Said Valeria, and they both made impact, resulting in an explosion inside the barrier. Ow, said Issei, who was sitting on his butt rubbing his head, and he got up, with a limp present. Valeria was standing in front of him and asked. You done? Yeah, in this condition, I am in no condition to continue fighting. said Issei, and the barrier dropped and Kuroka came over and helped Issei with walking back to his house and putting him down on his bed and beginning the work of getting his body back into working condition, but Issei knew that Valeria was not without damage herself. Cadis's paw. You okay? You seem to be limping a little bit and your breathing seems labored, said Cadis, and Valeria nodded and laid down on the couch and took some time sitting there, sleeping, and her body quickly recovered, her labored breathing going back to normal, and so she awoke after a quick nap. I had more damage than I thought. That gun does some terrible internal damage if the bullet bounces off the person's armor, said Valeria, who still had a minor cough. Issei's paw. So Azazel left? Asked Issei. Yes, he said he had business to take care of midway through your duel with Valeria, said Kuroka with a frown on her face. You need to take it down a notch. As much fun as it is to have a little spat with allies, your wounds have need to be treated when you get hurt. Kuroka said. Ugh, I know, but I can't help it sometimes. Wounds come with training and sparring, said Issei. Yes, but perhaps you should dodge more and get hit less, just a suggestion, said Kuroka, and when she was done there was something else as well, he could tell by the tension in the air. Kuroka. Is something wrong? You are holding me quite tightly. I don't mind considering some of the details, but you seem a little suspicious, said Issei, and Kuroka, whose hair was covering her eyes, hugged him closer to her body, and Issei was a little confused and decided to ask again. Will you tell me what's wrong? You push yourself too much. You put in great effort, I know that for sure, but you need to come back to me alive because of you. I feel the way I do, said Kuroka, and Issei was puzzled for a minute and removed himself for Kuroka and looked her in the eyes to see if he could find the answer. She's in heat. Kuroka, you're in heat, your emotions are heightened during this time. Besides, didn't you say you wanted to wait until your name has been cleared? Asked Issei. Maybe I did, but right now, I don't care, said Kuroka, who also got up and pushed Issei onto the bed. He got on entirely and Kuroka lay on top of him, her kimono loosened and her breasts pushing up against him, looking her in the face again. She was blushing and had a begging face. I am going to regret this later, aren't I? Issei asked Vulcan. Maybe, maybe not. But you need to be careful, doing this may hurt your girlfriend's heart if she finds out what happened, said Vulcan. Fine, but only one round, any more will tip off everyone in the house, said Issei. Then let's move to another room, it's a big house and easy to seclude ourselves, said Kuroka. Damn it, why is she so seductive? Issei asked Vulcan. You said it, partner, she is in heat. Since she is in heat she is going to be like that with you, as long as she has found a male to mate with, specifically, you, said Vulcan. Or Ogi? Asked Issei. Maybe, but stop being a pussy and man up, take her, said Vulcan. Issei grabbed Kuroka and lifted her, his strength holding her up, but slowly faltering. He decided he needed to lift weights more often. Ooh, you're being quite proactive today, Naya, said Kuroka, and he moved them both to her room, and Kuroka, who was facing Issei, looked behind Issei, who closed the door and casted a privacy barrier, which made it impossible to hear what is inside and unable to open the door. Let's get started then, said Issei, and he put her down, and his exposed chest showed scars from training and being healed from damage taken, and she completely undid her kimono, her body completely exposed to Issei, and he made the first move, a kiss while groping her behind, and the kiss was quite active, both of their tongues fighting for control, and it came to a stalemate as both ran out of breath before one could dominate the other. As that ended in a stalemate, they went directly to sex, and in the end they were both quite satisfied. Kuroka had fallen asleep happily with a smile on her sleeping face, and the privacy barrier shattered. And Issei was the gentleman and put on his clothes after getting out of bed and hung up her clothes neatly to avoid suspicion, and he destroyed the barrier, and he could tell Kuroka could detect the destruction of the barrier she put up, but from what it looked like she was ignoring the barrier's destruction, and Issei, fully clothed, walked out of the room. When he came out he saw Ogi, who was leaving the bathroom, and he caught a glimpse of the room and Ogi before Issei could say anything put a finger to his lips, telling him to stay quiet, and winked, and Issei understood that the secret was safe with him. He made his way down and he saw Valeria on the couch, and he could tell she knew what was up but stayed quiet. She knows, said Issei. So? You don't have to worry about her, it's probably more reasonable to worry about if she tells your girlfriend, said Vulcan. That is what I am worrying about, said Issei, and this seemed to haunt him the rest of the day, and when he went to bed something that usually doesn't happen but should probably be more common between himself and Cadis occurred. She went to Issei's room, and when Issei was sleeping, he lay on his side, and Cadis inserted herself under the covers, and getting closer to Issei he opened up, and he hugged her in his sleep, bringing her closer to himself. This surprised her, but she quickly grew comfortable with the action. Issei awoke the next day, and when he got up he yawned, and when he put his hand down at his side, which he expected to be empty, his hand landed on something soft. Vulcan was laughing because of it, but Issei didn't know what he was logging about, his eyes still in a squint, as he rubbed his eyes and opened them fully, and he saw it, his hand was on Cadis's breast. She started to stir after that moment, and she saw exactly what he saw as Issei had paused, his face was red, and her face was starting to flush as well. I say, you pervert," said Cadis, who quickly got dressed and left the room just as fast, and Issei sat confused for a few seconds, not knowing what had just occurred, and once he had processed it, his face had remained flushed and he tried to get the memory out of his mind. Well, he got dressed and remembered that it was the last day of school until the summer break and he was to receive a message from his father on what he was supposed to do for the summer break, as he had told Issei that he had a plan that he needed Issei for. "Ugh, I can't believe I did that to her. She was flustered and cute, but she is going to kill me," said Issei. "You don't know that for sure, partner. She may have liked it and will try it again maybe," said Vulcan. "You know, she calls me a pervert. If she heard what you were saying she would ask Azazel to work on you again," said Issei. "Yes, but she doesn't know unless you decide to snitch on me," said Vulcan. Issei, who was fully dressed, went to the kitchen and made breakfast. Typically one of the maids would do it, or Ogi would do it, but this time, since he woke up long before any of them, he got to work on it himself. He heard footsteps and turned to see Cadis, still flushed in the face, but fully dressed and prepared for school, and her practice sword in its sheath. "I imagine it's something important if you have your sword ready this early in the morning, Cadis," said Issei. "Yes, I have signed up to go to one of the school events. I am to be the ace for our club this time," said Cadis. "Good, your parents will be proud," said Jiro, which made both Issei and Cadis jump in surprise, and Jiro laughed. "Well, since you are awake, instead of handing it to a maid to give it to you, I'll just give it to you directly. Once her event has ended and school has ended for the semester, you are to head to our villa in the Underworld. There you will train, and once satisfactory results have been reached, you will be free to do what you want within reason in the city," said Jiro, who handed Issei a rolled piece of paper, and it was a map with a special magic circle to head to the train station without issue or hindrance. "I will get it done, Dad," said Issei, and Cadis, who had received her breakfast, began eating, and Issei did the same, and Jiro decided to join them. "What? Eating the military cafeteria food is bland, homemade food is always the best," said Jiro, and this made Cadis break out of her somber expression of embarrassment to laughter, covering her mouth and trying to suppress the sound of her laughter to avoid waking everyone else that was in the house. Eventually they finished and began their early walk to school. Jiro decided to head back to the Underworld and prep the villa for the peerage of his son, as well as his son to arrive. Issei left a note on the table, and it informed everyone that didn't go to school, Rainier, Hilda, Kuroka and Valeria, to meet up at the house after school had ended, in which he put down a specific time. On the walk to school, Cadis was hugging Issei's arm closely and then forced him to stop for a second. "About this morning," said Cadis. "Yeah, I'm sorry, it was an accident," said Issei, and Cadis seemed to hold on to Issei closer. "I know you had sex with Kuroka," said Cadis, and this stunned Issei. He didn't expect her to say that. "I am sorry if you are mad, I had to do something. I could lock her up and leave her to get sane. That's just torture. Also, I don't have anything to nullify her being in heat. I didn't even know that she worked the same way as a circa," Issei tried to explain, but Cadis interrupted with a kiss, catching Issei off guard again, and when they separated, she had a single finger up to Issei's mouth, telling him not to speak. "I am fine with it. But you must remember," Cadis said, "I am number one in this relationship." "Yeah, she definitely spoiled me," said Issei, and Vulcan was howling with laughter, coughing and snorting every once in a while at the way his partner felt. School that day ended up as a half day, and since the Kendo club school event, he stayed and he met with Cadis's mother and father and watched her as she quickly defeated opponent after opponent. As it wasn't an official match, she didn't have to take it seriously, but it seemed that what had happened that morning was spurring her to take it seriously. "I feel bad for her," said Cadis's father. "What for?" asked Issei. "She tries so hard, despite her proven record of being one of the best in Kendo," said her mother. "I never asked, but between her friend and Cadis, who would win?" asked Issei. "We don't know, she has never tried it, and even in private she hasn't tried it," said her father. The final event finally began, and it was Cadis and Murayama were the last two left, and by the way the masks were moving, they were talking, and when the referee let them go, neither moved. They stood there and Cadis seemed to shift her position. Instead of a normal Kendo stance, she had her stance more in the form of a olden samurai, allowing her grip to be wide at the pommel and handguard instead of tight to the middle and the handguard section of the sword. Neither moved. Not an inch until both launched at each other and Murayama moved first, Cadis blocking with the hilt and moving the strike aside, but maneuvering her strike which made contact on Murayama's face guard. This continued and it seemed that the new stances really confused her teammates since they had never seen her take those stances before and she seemed very comfortable doing them. It seems what I taught her she was able to apply to Kendo and without the use of martial arts while doing it," said Issei, and this confused both of Cadis's parents. "What do you mean?" Asked her father. I challenged her once in a one-on-one, and I defeated her using martial arts while she relied on the sword. I taught her some of what I know, and we ended up making a combined type of fighting that uses both martial arts and sword fighting. The moves she did on the first run and the one she is going to try now usually involve a push first to get some range and distance, then a strike usually down the torso, from shoulder to the waist, said Issei. It's one of her favorites that she likes to use, especially when she has the upper hand. And in this case, since she is confusing her opponent, she has a 2-to-1 advantage. Knowledge of her friend and the other, the stances that are different from the ones usually used in Kendo. Said Issei. So she has gained a liking towards dominating her opponent to force them into defeat. Said her father. And then it came to the last round, but it seems that Murayama has done the same thing, an unorthodox stance showed itself. This should prove interesting. It seems that she has taken up an unorthodox stance as well. Will this throw a wrench in Cadis's plan, or maybe is it a bluff? Said Issei, and this left Cadis's parents puzzled as well, and the match started. A draw, both attacked at the same time. Murayama landed her strike by hitting Cadis in the face mask, and Cadis hit Murayama in the chest, dead center. The single strike decided it, Cadis's victory, and once they both removed their helmets and shook hands, he could tell there was no hard feelings, but Murayama did seem jealous that Cadis knew some new tactics and didn't consult her, and she looked over at the stands and saw Issei with his school bag near her parents, and bit her lip with a smile present. Murayama put it all together, and seemed to be even more annoyed figuring out where she learned her new tactics. That explains why you were always missing after school twice a week, and that one time he was there with you. Said Murayama, and Cadis nodded with a smile on her face and pride visibly shown on Issei's face at the outcome of her training. I enjoy the company of him. He makes my heart flutter, skip a beat, and he even helps me pursue my goals. I couldn't ask for a better man to be my boyfriend. Said Cadis. I see. Will you still help us when it comes to the perverted duo? Asked Murayama. Yes, the only man I want to see me that way is Issei, my Issei. Said Cadis, and they both headed towards the locker room. Excuse me, I will need to be taking a walk for a minute. Said Issei, and he left Cadis's parents at the gymnasium and went to stalk his prey, and just as suspected they were there doing exactly what he expected them to do. It's a shame you two, you were good friends, but to stare at my woman with such eyes, well, I am quite infuriated. Issei said to a peeping Mitsuda and Motohama, and he grabbed them by the shoulders and dragged them, and the Kendo club girls came out just in time to see Issei's spoils from his hunt. Do what you must. Said Issei, and the Kendo club girls drew their shinai and Issei let them go, and the Kendo club girls chased Mitsuda and Motohama, while Murayama and Cadis stayed where they were, Cadis mostly giggling at what had just occurred, and Murayama with a serious look on her face. So you trained her to fight the way she does, Hyoudou? Asked Murayama with a serious look on her face. Yes. Said Issei, and she smiled. Good, you better take care of her because I see her as a sister, make her cry, she said, and gave Issei a glare, and I will hurt you. Your friend is a hard ass, Cadis. I can't tell if she is annoyed or just has a stick up her ass. Said Issei. She has always been that way. Her intensity is one of the reasons why we are so good at Kendo in the first place. Said Cadis. That reminds me, did you tell your parents about our plan? Asked Issei, and Cadis with a smile on her face and leaning into nodded in a yes motion, and he met expectations. Maybe he could pick up another peerage member or two before they left, and he had just the candidates. Cadis. Keep an eye on the two of them and lure them in. I want to talk to him alone. Said Issei, and she nodded. Once the task was complete, a barrier was erected and it trapped in the two students. Hello, Loma. Said Issei, and he was confused. Hyoudou? What are you doing? What is this? Asked Loma. Simple. I am going to give you a choice after a small revelation. The angels and devils and the underworld are real. I have come to invite you to my peerage as I have need of your skills. If you decline, this encounter will be wiped from your memories and you will be able to go about your usual business. Said Issei. So if I refuse, you will let me go? Asked Loma. Yes. Said Issei, and Loma thought about it. If I accept, can I get stronger? Asked Loma. Yes, you can and will. We are actually on our way to my home, so we can pack up and go to my home in the underworld. There will be plenty of training to be done there. Said Issei. I accept. Said Loma, and Issei told him what he needed to do and he did it, but Loma didn't pass out. He was highly compatible with the mutated evil piece, and he took Loma and Cadis with him to his home through a magic circle before destroying the barrier, and the magic circles to take him to the train was being prepared as Kuroka was preparing to cast it. My maids will take care of getting clothes for you, Loma, you just need to follow my lead. Said Issei, and his current peerage was sent to the train. Underworld Express. Well, all that is left is to wait until our stop. My father should be here soon, and our destination will be the my family villa. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot to tell you, Loma, welcome to the peerage of Vinea. Said Issei, and he got a visit from Riaz and Sona, who had also boarded the same train. Our stop should be first, and let me introduce you to my two newest pieces, Valeria, my author bishop, and Loma, my other knight. Said Issei. Nice to meet you, Valeria, and Loma. By the way, are you the same Loma that goes to our school? Asked Sona, and Loma had sweat drop down his face from the intense stare he was getting from Sona, and Valeria was starting to get disturbed by how Riaz was staring at her. Are you going to keep staring or are you going to ask something? Asked Valeria. Are you the white dragon? Asked Riaz. Damn it, right on the head, why did she have to go and ask that immediately? Asked Issei. She must be suspicious of Valeria and her sacred gear. There is only one way to play it, the truth. Said Vulcan. Man, things were getting way too intense inside that train car. Said Valeria, yawning and stretching. Yes, I don't know why she immediately went to asking what your sacred gear was. Said Issei. Well, she is the Grimoire heiress and she has to retake some ground since you showed your disappointment in her. Said Kuroka. Perhaps, but you must admit that it was rather rude of her. Said Ogi. They were all walking towards the villa and when they arrived they were greeted by Issei's father and the team of maids there already there. And so, our summer begins. Said Issei. And on day 1, Issei had work to do while everyone else had the first day off. He was studying battle tactics, watching documentaries and formulating strategies using the informatium he had at hand. What came of it was strategies to defeat other houses and their peerages if he has to fight them. He specifically had to watch Sererg's matches because despite him seeming like he is just a brute, his tactics were still present. He was a tactical genius in disguise. I see you're watching Sererg Bale's matches again, are you stuck? Asked Jiro. Without a doubt, he himself is a fighter, he likes to dominate his opponents and finish them, he takes his time and is methodical in his planning, and he most definitely doesn't mess around. Said Issei. Yes, but brute force can also be a weakness. Every armor has a crack in it somewhere, it just takes time to find it, you might have to stall to find it, but when you do find it, you can hard target that spot and the armor will break. Said Jiro, and Issei looked again, focusing specifically on Sererg, and after about 20 minutes of film he saw it. He had a weakness, but he compensated for it so much that it became practically invisible. He uses his weak side as a shield while he attacks with his strong side. Said Issei. Correct, however there is also this, his power as the lion also helps him use his weak side as the shield. People tend to use the idea of the side that they keep back as the weak side, when in reality they use it interchangeably as a way to confuse their opponents. Said Jiro, and Issei thought of a plan to defeat Sererg if he ever had to fight him in a raiding game, but he still had a long way to go. So, what do you think he's doing? Asked Valeria. Studying like he said he would do. Eventually we will have to fight in a raiding game, and I would prefer it if he was as competitive and competent as possible before and during such a possible event. Said Ogi. But he has been in there 3 days already and no training has been done yet. Said Valeria. Actually, I have been training, learning to control my temper and furthermore my dragon, he can get rather rowdy if my mood is wrong. Said Cadis, who was getting up off the couch to go outside. Then let's train together, maybe I can help you reach your goal. What is your goal? Asked Valeria. Balance breaker. I have not reached my peak potential yet. The only thing that has been carrying me so far is my minor powers and skill alone. Said Cadis as she strode down the hallway with Ogi and Valeria in tow, and they head outside, and Cadis gets to work on her training, but instead of practicing her normal stances and maneuvers she practices strikes on a dummy which Jiro had brought, and then Valeria, who has gotten bored, grabs her by the shoulder and throws her backwards. What the hell, Val? Asked Cadis, and Ogi starts to get ready to fight as well, but Valeria gives him a look telling him to stay out of it. A dragon doesn't train using a practice dummy, they train and practice by fighting each other. Said Valeria, flaring her power outwards. Vanishing dragon, balance breaker. Roared the divine dividing gear. Volley, what are you doing? Asked Albion, showing her how dragons truly fight, not the BS the devil army uses. Said Valeria. Then my BS must not be good enough for you. Said Jiro, who was behind her with a menacing aura of hatred and a hand on her shoulder. Valeria tries to counter and kick Jiro, and he blocks it without hesitation. Divine dividing, it's a good sacred gear to have, Valeria, but I believe it is that same sacred gear that is making you too cocky. Said Jiro. Divide. Said Albion, and it started to shrink the amount of power in Jiro, but he just compensated by throwing Valeria forward and landing on top of her, making her cough from having the air beat out of her lungs again. Like father like son volley, they tend to both aim for the lungs. You must get him off of you now or you will pass out from oxygen deprivation. Said Albion. I know. He is just really heavy and his footing is steadfast. Said Valeria, and she made a quick move to punch Jiro's leg to see if she can destabilize his footing, but he quickly jumped away. Running away? Asked Valeria. No, just realized that someone of your minuscule caliber isn't worth my time unless you are willing to listen. Said Jiro. Valeria was infuriated by what he said, but knew that some of what he said was correct. She was cocky, mostly because no one up to that point could defeat her, and the only one to come close enough was Issei, her current master for the time being, but his father practically immobilized her in the matter of seconds without trading blows. If my son wasn't messing around the first day you sparred with him, maybe you won't be as cocky as you are. And being a battle maniac on the side doesn't help you at all. It may give you senses to combat those with more training and experience, but it only increases your senses and bloodlust, not your true power or experience. Just like my son taught Cadis, your weakness has shown itself, and the only way to defeat it is to look within and kill the habit. Said Jiro, who was now walking away. Is he always so condescending? Asked Valeria while coughing. Yes, but it's that stoic mood that forged Issei man he is today. Without it, he may have ended up like Riser, a prick who didn't know what the word no means. Said Cadis with a smile on her face. Issei was working on another plan to defeat Sparring, and he had figured out the formula he uses for his choices and attacks. He knew that Sparring was a smart man, and that made him highly predictable. If he was a blockhead like Riser, then it would have been extremely difficult to make a solid plan to defeat him. Done. Said Issei, and he packed up the plans he made and put them in a container labeled Operation Gladius. Why did I have to give it such a cool name? Just thinking about the name on the canister makes me cringe a little. Said Issei. You named it, not me, partner. Said Vulcan. Well, then again, I highly doubt I will reach Bale's level. So maybe this will be one of those plans that just sits on the shelf and gathers dust. Said Issei. Perhaps, but you still do have a raiding game coming, son. Said Jiro. I know I am new, but still aren't I kind of young to be doing that? Asked Issei. Yes, but it seems that Mrs. Phoenix really wants to bring you and Ravel together, by choice or like Riser, by force. Said Jiro. I prefer by force. I will wrestle my life away. You tried, Dad, don't fret over failure. That's why we have a plan B, right? Exactly why you make a plan B, son. Since you don't know much about Ravel's mother, I shall teach you, and you will need to train your peerage to counter them. Said Jiro. Backup plan, here we go. Lady Phoenix, just like all of the Phoenix heirs, has regeneration abilities. However, she is quite the pacifist. She rarely fights, but this is an exception. If you want your master to remain free, you must defeat her and her peerage, and without a doubt Ravel, the daughter of the house, will likely be present. We still don't know if she is going to fight or if she will continue to spectate. The bad news in this is that she has a full peerage to back her, like Riser and Bis peerage. These will be difficult opponents to defeat, and without a doubt some of you will fall in battle. To go flawless in a raiding game is almost impossible. Lucky for all of you, the queen has not been traded out. If she had gotten the bomb queen as a trade, you would be in trouble. Said Jiro. But sir, isn't Ravel still quite the threat? Last game she was their strategist. Once she was eliminated, their offensive crumbled and was crippled. Said Ogi. A good point, Ogi. You are right. Expect complicated plans to come out of Ravel's mind again. It is one of the reasons why Ria's peerage fell so easily. She predicted her moves since she was a novice in the raiding games. Said Jiro. I have already came up with a battle plan to take them down. However, the stunt that Mitsuda pulled can't be replicated here, since the use of holy water is forbidden in a raiding game. This is the plan. First off, Ogi, since you are the strongest, you are the probe, you will prod their defenses and draw out pursuers. Rainier and Cadis will back you up, hiding your auras. You will set up an ambush point, and once Ogi has crossed your line, all pursuers will be eliminated. Kuroka will set up spells to cancel out their attacks on the flanks, and once her queen comes out, it will be Valeria's job to eliminate that piece. The bishops are up to the rooks to take care of, the knights will be taken care of by the bishops, and the rooks taken out by the knights. I have room for one more member, however looking for one is out of the question until we get back to Kuo. Said Issei. But what about the pawns, Naya? Asked Kuroka. Simple. I bait them in to try to promote, then I wipe them off the board. As long as they don't get the chance to promote, I should be fine. Said Issei. Unacceptable. Said Valeria. So stupid. Said Ogi. He's such a blockhead. Said Kuroka. What? I can't let you all take the glory. I have to get some action myself once in a while. It doesn't sit right with me. Said Issei. Dude, in chess you are supposed to not move. If you have to move, we messed up somewhere in the plan. Said Loma. Fine, then if Rainier and Cadis finish early and are not too damaged, then they will fall back to me. How about that then? Said Issei, and they all agreed that it was an improvement but wasn't the best option. Remember, if you see Ravel, she is a priority target. Don't abandon your position to take her down, but if she approaches your station, take her down. Like Ogi said, once she is off the field they will be in disarray. Said Issei, and they all agreed. This was followed by 2 weeks of training, and Kat is still cold to reach her peak, but continued to get stronger and stronger. Ogi didn't have a sacred gear still, but was like a smaller and weaker version of Sparring, and used physical strength as a base to perform combat. Rainier was able to make armor out of her shadow powers, and the armor was weightless. It could stop one projectile, but then it would lose its effect and was completely useless against fire, the Phoenix clan's main abilities. Valeria did some training, but didn't do much since she knew what she had was enough already. Loma practiced with a sword he borrowed from Kiba's sword birth, and Hilda did some meditation and practiced her attack magic. Kuroka did as usual and slacked off. However, even without training she was dangerous as she was, and the stories that surrounded her made the blood curdle in anyone that faced her. Despite her slacking off on training, she was a force to be reckoned with. 4 days until the Phoenix Vinea rating game. Come on, keep it up, stamina is a top priority, as sometimes you will need to run to counter-attack. Once you drop your speed from your running, it will take time to get back that momentum. Keep it up, 3 laps to go," said Jiro. Issei took it upon himself to make sure that his peerage was ready to fight them. His peerage was in good shape, but he feared that it wasn't enough. More than half were experienced fighters, while Loma and Caddis were still new to the concept. Ogi had seen some combat while Kuroka, Valeria, Rainier and Hyoudou had fought their fair share of opponents, experienced to inexperienced, but still it is better to remain cautious than it is to go in guns blazing. Issei at that moment was practicing martial arts with Loma and Caddis, and he still dominated against Caddis since his power gave him an advantage in fighting them off. However, it was only a matter of time until they figured out how to beat him. "Too slow, pick up the pace," said Issei as he bobbed and weaved through attacks and attempts to grab him, and then he saw it. They both attacked at the same time. He had only felt that rush once before, when Ogi was trying to take him down during the sparring match. His vision sped up, the paths of the strikes became clear, and he went right in between them and through Loma while he swept the leg with Caddis. Before she could hit the ground, he caught her and kissed her. Their lips let go of each other, which led to Caddis saying, "And you said I was naughty." "Heh," responded Issei. "Hey lovebirds, I haven't developed my wings yet, can you pull me up?" asked Loma, and Issei realized what he just did. Loma was barely holding on to the ledge, and he was 3 stories up. If he dropped, he was either going to be paralyzed or dead. Issei grabbed his wrist, and Caddis grabbed the other one and lifted Loma back up and over the edge. "Thanks guys," said Loma, out of breath from the adrenaline running his brain and heart at over 1,000 miles an hour. He lied there for a sec, then got up. "It's the end of the day, training is over for today, you are getting better, both of you are, but you need to pick up speed and don't leave any openings, 1 opening is a victory of their peerage," said Issei. "That reminds me, about their peerage, they are all fire users, right?" asked Loma. "Definitely," said Issei. "Then I guess we should learn to extinguish it," said Loma. "Caddis could if we forced her to the limit, but I don't recommend that because if she does it could have side effects," said Issei. "Yes, but there is something else," said Loma, and then he felt it. The day was warm, but the flat concrete area on the roof there they were sparring had frost spreading all over it. "Ice, is it a sacred gear or?" asked Caddis, and Loma got up as the ice spread all over him, covering his legs, locking them in place, then his chest, making them unmovable, then both his arms and then his head. Issei freaked out, but as he approached, Loma broke the barrier of ice, and chilling ice mist came from his fists and shoulders. "Ice magic. Quite the warlock, aren't you, Loma?" asked Issei, and Loma raised his fists and smiled. "Stay out of this, Caddis, I want to see his limits," said Issei, and he drew his gun, the flames licking his hand. Vulcan was itching for a fight, and Loma threw away the sword made for him, and he made one of pure ice, and when he made the first swing, the cold trail could be felt as it nearly hit his body, and Issei fired on round and it shattered the sword, and Loma just summoned another one after destroying the broken one, and he threw an ice dagger at Issei, and he just barely dodged it, and he felt the cold, it was slowing him down, even though it just barely touched him. "Damn, I need to take this more seriously then," and he flared his aura, level 2. Said Issei, and his heat increased and fought off the cold on him. "Enough," yelled Jiro. He had a proud look on his face, and he then said, "Your opponent is me." He had finished the training of everyone else, and he wanted to test the ice powers of Loma and the firepower of his son Issei. He even wanted to get a taste of the skill that Caddis had learned and put to use. "Well, who's first?" asked Jiro, and Issei looked at both of them and nodded, and Loma made a shield of ice and threw it towards Jiro, and he broke it with one hand. He fell for the same trick Issei did, but it seemed that he had a better resistance to it than Issei did. Behind the shield was Caddis, and she pushed Jiro and lunged with her blade, and he stepped aside, but Issei already had that route covered. 3 rounds screamed through, and he took damage as he could not adjust his speed in time, and the wound of the practice round staggered him, and Loma froze him in place, and both Issei and Caddis threw punches and kicks, and some were landing until he said, "I yield." And all 3 backed down. Issei was proud of this achievement. 2 days before the Phoenix Vinea rating game. Remember, warriors have focus, rely on their skills, senses and training, but remember to use your sense of reason when an ally goes down. Don't let your anger push you over the edge and control you," said Jiro. Valeria has seemed to gotten rid of her cocky actions and acted with more confidence, pushing herself to even farther away limits. The Juggernaut drive, though a far objective, a good one to be sure. "Loma, control that ice. Perhaps you and Caddis can work together and make a trap. If this works, then we can deny them control of an area. No one expects ice on the ground," said Issei, and Caddis threw some water using her powers, and once it hit the ground, Loma froze it. Issei stepped in it with long pants on. "Still too mushy, I want you to freeze it," said Issei, and the work continued, and once it was completed, Loma practiced forging weapons out of ice, and he made axes, knives, swords, a shield, a spear and what looked like an ice pick. "How well are they holding against the heat?" Asked Issei perfectly, I expected some melting already, but it hasn't occurred yet. Said Loma, and this made Issei happy at the progress his peerage is making. Last day before the Phoenix Vinea rating game. Man, I am beat, do we have permission to head to the city? Asked Ogi. Yes, you all deserve it after the work you have been putting in. Said Jiro. Well, if that's the case, I think I am going to go on a date. Said Issei, and he got up and notified Cadis and headed to his room to get properly dressed, and so he did, and once it was time he waited at the front door and he looked at his watch, he was 5 minutes early. Well, you have quite the outfit on, trying to win her heart permanently? Asked Jiro. Maybe I am, is that an issue? Asked Issei. No, just the idea of my son all grown up and the woman of his dreams in his sights makes me happy to know that you will find the one early. It took me most of my life to find your mother, and before we loved each other we were enemies, then friends in Nobunaga's army, and by the time he had died we loved each other, said Jiro. So if you have a shot, don't let it slip out of your hands, take it and stick to it, sometimes holding on tight will give you the desired reward, but at the same time you need to know when to let go. I don't understand, father. What do you mean? Asked Issei. You will learn in time, but for now, you have a woman to take care of. Said his father, and Issei looked up at the stairs and her colors complemented the ones he was wearing, however her choice in clothing was likely influenced by Kuroka. Reminder to self, Kuroka has earned an extra special reward. She is going to be wobbly in the legs tomorrow morning. Said Issei, and Vulcan laughed at what his partner had just alluded to. Vinea area and town, formerly the demon city of Taft. So, today is our special day, so what would you like to do? Asked Issei, and with a smile and a small giggle seeing what she wanted to do she dragged Issei with him to a clothing store. The town was changed as an influence of the Vinea villa in the center of the city. It has taken the influence of an old western town, however the way people dressed was dependent on what they were doing. There were other devils on dates, and since they didn't know he was the son of the master of the city, he was glad that people were not bowing at his feet every 100 feet or so. Welcome to Devil's Jewels, how can I help you? The clerk started, and then he instantly recognized Issei. Vinea-sama, it is good to see you, I am honored for you and your girlfriend to enter my shop. The female clerk said, well bound please, no need for formalities around me, I am on vacation and undercover, so please don't tip everyone off that I am in town. Issei said, and she did as she was told. Can I ask what type of jewelry you are looking for? She asked him. Do you do custom orders? Asked Issei. Yes, but they will take 3 days to complete at minimum, dependent on the type of jewelry we are making. Said the clerk. Good, tomorrow I will be on Devil TV, I am going to be in a rating game, if I fail and lose make a pair of engagement rings, it will have to have both influences of my family name and the Phoenix clan. Said Issei quietly, and the clerk wrote it down and handed it to someone in the back. Now, no more gloomy plans, can I recommend these? Asked the clerk, pulling out a pair of earrings, and they matched Cadis to a T. The clerk definitely knew her stuff, it matched her amber-colored eyes, and still had some purple in it. Do you have something like this that is closer to a set of rings? Asked Issei. Indeed, we had an order for something like that, but the buyer gave us hell over how it wasn't what he asked for, and so we added it to our inventory, no charge for it, the only thing I ask is to spread our name, bring us more customers, we are not well known since our business just came in. Said the clerk, and the jewelry maker in the back gave the thumbs up in agreement. Alrighty then, one question though, can I get these enchanted? Asked Issei, and the female clerk nodded and got to work. What would you like as an enchantment? She asked. Anything that works as an emergency signal device. Asked Issei, and she nodded, got to work and finished in a minute and a half. Thanks, now since she is here. Said Issei, walking over to Cadis with a ring. Cadis, this is my promise to you, the woman I love, take this ring and in your time of dire need, call me. Said Issei, and Cadis held out her hand, and he put it on her left ring finger, and it fitted itself to the size of her finger, and he put his own on as the receiver, while hers is the broadcaster. He kissed her on the cheek, and she reciprocated by putting her arms around his neck and getting on her tiptoes. She kissed Issei directly on the lips. The rest of the date day went like a breeze. The last things they did was in a photo booth, they had pictures taken as a reminder of their time together, and the final thing was that since it was a festival day they ended up on the hilltop near the villa overlooking the area, and multiple couples were there knowing where the good spots were to see the fireworks. 3, 2, 1. Issei said, and the firework was shot into the sky and exploded. Cadis turned towards Issei, who had his hands on the railing, and turning to the side to see Cadis she began to say, I love why, but was interrupted by a few delinquents. Hey, what is a pretty little thing like you doing with a chump like this? Why don't you come with us to have some fun? Asked a delinquent, pulling her through the crowd and her struggling and trying to escape. She couldn't use her gear since cutting off his hand would draw too much attention, and flipping him wouldn't work since they were in the middle of a crowd and she was being dragged off by one while the other two decided to engage Issei in combat. So chump, what is it going to be? Your life or your money and your girl? Said the delinquent. Neither. said Issei, and he bolted right at them. They had their knives out and they tried to stab him, but he broke one of delinquent's arms and he threw the other one onto the delinquent whose arm he broke. "Wait, that's him," said one of the demons. "What?" asked another. "That's Issei Vinea, the son of Commander Jiro," said another, and Issei moved himself through the crowd and he saw it. He was trying to take advantage of her, groping her breast and grabbing her rear. "Hands off my girl," said Issei, and Cadis was happy and embarrassed at the same time, and the delinquent let her go, but her hands were still tied, so the boys were not able to take care of business. "Oh well, I guess I need to beat you down before I use your girl," said the delinquent, and he drew a switchblade. Issei hated the idea, but he drew his gun. "Last chance, let her go, the consequences will be painful if you don't," said Issei, pointing the gun at the delinquent, but he seemed unfazed. The delinquent charged him and he kicked the legs out from under the delinquent and fired 3 practice rounds, and the rubber hurt him badly as they made impact on his gut, making the delinquent puke. "Think smarter next time, stealing the girl of Vinea is bound to get you killed," said Issei. "You bluff, you aren't the man's son, you don't even look like him," said the delinquent. "Of course I don't, I slicked my hair back, if I hadn't you would see it more clearly," said Issei, grabbing his knife from the night. Kakabiel was recaptured and cut Cadis's binds, allowing her to get back on her feet, and behind him the delinquent had gotten back up on his feet and was preparing to stab Issei in the back, and in response to that and to keep her lover from being killed, she grabbed Issei's knife and dragged the knife under the delinquent's arm, and it caused him to stumble and drop the knife. And here and the police showed up soon after and got Issei and Cadis's statements as well as the crowd statements, and they were able to take the 2 who fraud Issei to prison, and the one who attacked them got away. In the end he was justified and they let him go. Day of the raiding game. Gear up, we have 1 hour before it's time. Remember, this is my first time in command, so take it easy on me, and remember, stick to the plant traps and luring, then start eliminating opponents," said Issei, and they all nodded. He was happy at what was happening and he was ready to go, and he saw a silver transportation circle and out of it came Graphia Lucifuge. "Boots up, time to go, it is game time," said Ogi, and everyone formed up behind Graphia and the circle moved them from where they were standing to another location. Just like the battle with Riser, Kuo Academy was the battlefield again. Issei spoke up. "Remember your roles, preparations for plan A, begin." End of the here. So that's it for today's video guys. Before you go, just like the video and share it with your friends.